On this episode of the Dudes and Dads podcast, we talk about teen dating.
You're listening to the Dudes and Dads podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMont and Andy Lehman.
Joel,
Andy.
it's a sad day.
Oh, is it?
Notre Dame lost last night, and that was a terrible loss. They should not have lost.
It was bad. It was a rough game.
It was a terrible game.
rough game. Not sure what's going on with all of that. And, thankfully, the NFL season is upon us. And
I'm more of a college fan, though. I'm going to admit.
Yeah. I get it. I understand. I'm hoping for something to look forward to in football. That's really what we're all talking about. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Dudes and Dads podcast. Glad that each and every one of you are here. Looking forward to jumping into our conversation this evening. But first and foremost, Andy, how's life? How are you doing?
Life is doing pretty good. I'm really enjoying what we're doing tonight. So we have a live studio audience kind of tonight.
A live studio audience.
So we decided to do a Zoom room. This is something that we've toyed around with before. We did it for some of our Patreon supporters, but no one ever showed up. So I thought, hey, you know what? Let's invite everybody.
Yeah,
because this is fun. And so we did. And we have Jeremy hanging out with us tonight. And he's doing work. He's working and he's here till 6 a.m. Hopefully the show doesn't go till 6 a.m.
We'll definitely shut it down before that. But that's awesome. Glad to have Jeremy and heck anybody else that wants to come on and hang out for a bit.
So dudesanddads.com/join will get you on that. And we're also doing our normal stream we're doing to the YouTubes. There we go. I couldn't think of the word I was trying to the YouTube. I was trying to put there. Yeah. So and then Jeremy says glad to be here. So Jeremy, yes, thanks for hanging out with us.
That's awesome, man. Cool. Yes, and then how am I doing, Andy? So glad you asked.
I was going to get to that. I promise. I was.
Kidding.
I promise. I was. Hold on.
No, okay. We're doing well. I don't know how you feel, Andy, but it's this time of year where you're hopefully starting to get into the rhythm of school.
Yes.
With the kids back on some level of schedule.
Yes. I'm getting there.
And I will say, for those as we've shared with friends, so Josiah, son number 2, is in a different school corporation this year. It's transferred over with the Lehman kids over to Fairfield Community Schools, and it's going so well, and we've just been very well welcomed into that school community, and we have some people that we know and they're already over there and have come and said hello to us at football games and all that good stuff. So it's going well, but I do this year have 4 kids in 4 different school buildings.
Ouch.
We acutely
that one's tough.
We acutely feel that, like, the schedule, if ever there was a need to make sure, as far as Jackie and I are concerned and the kids, just that our schedules are up to date and calendars are accurate. Boy, it's now, because
it's tough when you have kids in one school, let alone in 4 different schools. We have them in 2 different schools right now. We know with Hattie being in the elementary and the others being at the junior or at the high school. They're all in high school now. So yeah, it's been interesting to have them in the different schools.
Yeah. And yeah, it just feels there's more to keep track of. So we're doing okay so far. We haven't left anybody.
You haven't left anyone at the school?
No, we've picked up people where they need to be picked up, and mostly got them dropped off where they need to get dropped off to, and all of that. So, but yeah, just so grateful to kind of be in a rhythm. Rhythms are good, and having some schedule is kind of, I don't know, because toward the end of the summer, it's just like, kids, you need to get back in school. We need to get some sanity back into our schedule. So anyway, it's good to be there now. Andy, what else do we need to say? Do we need to thank somebody?
We do need to thank somebody. We want to thank Everence Financial for their support. Support comes from Everence, dedicated to helping make Medicare an easy step through free educational seminars.
Ooh.
individual consultations.
Ooh.
Learn more at Everence.com/Medicare-Monday. Securities offered through Concourse Financial Group, Securities Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC.
Wow. Everence, we love you. We're grateful for you.
Yes, we do.
Love it. Let's see here, Andy. So recently, in addition, before we jump into our topic, we've had over the years, I love we can say over the years now because we've been at this a little bit, but we've always had such really, really great support from our listening community, people that have just shown up for us all the way back in the days beginning. So we joke about this now. It's a true story. This podcast began on a wing and a prayer on borrowed equipment at every which way. Things that we found that no one else was using, that we could kind of piece together this podcast, and that began in the conference room of our good friend
Clark,
Dr. Clark Kaufman, who was so
generous to let us be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did that. We were in a few different spots, and finally we are in our studio where we are now. And so along the way, as we've been building this podcast and trying to keep up, keep a certain level, which we have heard time and time again, this is a major credit to the work that Andy has done on the technology side. What we've heard time and time again is that the quality, sound quality, and the production quality of this podcast are. People try to say it nicely, but they're like, it's way better than I thought it would be, right? Because we don't have millions of dollars of budget and all production staff and all of this, right? But that quality and our kind of sustainability in that area has been because people have come alongside of us and helped us improve our equipment and have kind of gotten us what we need to do as essentially good of a job as we can.
And we appreciate that.
And we do. And we feel like we have the best audience, we have the best community around us. Like, we're really fortunate. And so we've kind of run into our next, I guess what you would say, technology challenge, so to speak, for something that we need kind of for the sustainability and just general like production of the show.
Yeah. So we've been using a borrowed laptop, a work laptop, my work laptop to do this show, from the editing down to the video, down to every part of the show. This technology really is my laptop. And with restrictions, they're starting to put more and more restrictions
because you work for a financial institution, right?
Which makes sense. And so they're putting more and more restrictions on the laptop of what I can do and can't do with it. And so with that, we won't be able to use it much longer to do this show. And so we're in need of a new laptop. And so again, this because we're doing so much video and audio production with it, it needs to be a high-end laptop. And so
it's got serious work to do.
And so it's not a cheap laptop. But if you would like to help out with that purchase of the laptop with us, you can head on over to dudesanddads.com/help and make a PayPal donation there, and we would greatly appreciate it. But again, like just with the restrictions coming down, like we feel like we need to separate ourselves from from using that laptop.
We need a dedicated machine that we can use to get the job done and all of that. So
dudesanddads.com/help if you would love to help out.
Nice. Perfect. Appreciate you all. Well, that's the beginning of our we'll call that our beginning of our computer campaign right there. So thank you everyone in advance for your help. Hey, Andy, we were discussing topics for this show. And it was like, what did we want to bring somebody in, or did we want to have a conversation between the two of us? Because that can be good from time to time. And I said, because this has been on my mind, and I think it's a sphere that both of us are to varying degrees navigating, having conversations with our spouses and with our children, talking on the topic of dating, of our kids dating, or whether they're able to date or not at all, and if they are, when are they able to, and all of the fine details in between. And so I've been thinking about this because let me say at the outset, and I think you're probably in the same boat as I am. I want to be careful. Our kids listen to this show, and their friends listen to this show. And so I want to be respectful because we're going to be talking about our children, to a certain degree. Though I want to be respectful of them and their there's significant others / close friends or people that they are maybe in these sort of relationships with. Because I was thinking to myself, it's like, man, I don't ever want my kids to feel like whatever they talk to me about, like about
right,
their
it's going to show up on this show.
End up on the podcast, whatever. It's kind of like,
and it may,
and it's kind of like comedians where it's like, oh, you just give me new material for new jokes,
or pastors' kids. I mean, same thing. Right?
Sermon. You're going to be a sermon title, absolutely.
So Joel, like, for me, I know. Let's talk a little bit about initial feelings. You know, when we first mentioned this topic, and you mentioned this topic, and Julie and I have been kind of discussing it on and off because one of our children seems to be more, interested in that that life, the dating life, than the other ones do. And so we've been chatting about that a little bit. And so, what feelings for you come up when I say, hey, Joel?
If I'm honest, this is the thing. When I was pondering this question, I think there's just a lot of fear. I think if I'm really honest with you, I think there's a lot of fear. And I've really been trying to dig into why I am so fearful about it, because it at this stage in life, with our kids at this adolescent, so Aaron right now is 14, will be 15 here end of November. Josiah's 13. It feels like these relationships, I don't know, that my kids' relationships are so important. I'm very, very clear about how important their close relationships are. And I'm very, very clear about when the relationships are going well in their circles, how I see my kids kind of flourishing and, they're engaged and they seem happy and they're doing well. And when there's a relationship that's sideways, and that could be any kind of relationship that's close in their circle, it's like, I don't know if I would say devastating, but it matters.
Oh yeah.
It matters really significantly. Not unlike us as adults, but I think as we get older, we learn to navigate some of that stuff. And probably by the time we're adults, hopefully you feel this way about me. We've kind of settled in on like who our core people are. These are people. It's like, okay, I can trust these people. I can be vulnerable with them. This is my tribe. These are my people. And I'm not constantly worried about like my circle of friends because I know who they are, and it's whereas my kids are still forming that. Right. And so that comes into terms with like the dating relationships. And so there's there's fear of, hey, if they put themselves out there, make themselves vulnerable to a relationship, and it goes bad, that's one thing. What's that going to mean for them? Right.
Well, I mean, honestly, it could be anything. I mean, it could be ending, especially if there's friendships that go with that. Let's say you're dating somebody who is friends with the person you're dating, and you're friends with them, and it could definitely go sideways, and that would be bad.
Well, and then obviously just for them, like it's not just a single, to your point, it's not just a single relationship. It's like the network. It's like the network of relationships that they're involved in.
Especially in high school, because usually, again, you're friends with those people, and it's not just not just something that it's a single person dating.
So there's fear on that. And I think the other thing is that, and this is where maybe this is the PG-13 part of the show. Like,
cover yours if you're under 13.
There's all of you. There's and mind you, I read a pretty lengthy research piece from Pew Research, and which we got some statistics from it to talk about. But the average age where teens are beginning to enter into sexual relationships is right around that. As soon as they turn basically like right at 15, like you start seeing like a pretty significant increase at 15 to 17 range. And my eldest son being there, approaching 15, I think that's the other thing too. Like really understanding, like, man, and asking the question, have we poured into him all the resources that he needs to make wise choices in his relationships? Have we had the appropriate conversations? Are we continuing? Because the conversation, we've said this on other shows, the conversation is different kind of as he gets older. There's more to it, right? And so there's kind of there can be an anxiety around that of like, I want you, like, I really hope that you will make the right choices and not make choices that are going to harm you or sideline you in some
I think
sort of way.
that happens in anything, not just dating though, right? I mean, that's something that we've been talking about. So I've got an 18-year-old, 17-year-old, you know, on down the line.
Yep.
And so we've been kind of talking about that all along. You know, those are things that I hope that I've instilled in all of my children.
Yep.
The values that I hold, but I also, you know, for everything, not just dating. But
yeah. And that's where it's like, now it feels like, and this is about me just as much as anything, where it's like, oh, now I get to see my impact on display a little bit, like in terms of how they're, you know, what they're taking on and what they're internalizing, even though this whole time they might have been, I mean, I know that so many times when we're trying to have serious conversations about stuff, it's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, got it, you know, like,
right.
They want to be out of that because there's an uncomfortability to it and all of that, which, you know, they want to be out of that conversation like yesterday, and it's like, oh man, I just hope that you can, you know, that they're kind of latching on and gleaning to a couple of essential things. So again, back to it, if I'm really honest, there's some fear there for a few different reasons, and I really hope it's like, that's not the key thing that's guiding, you know, guiding my decisions about, you know, what I'm talking to them about, and kind of what our guidelines are.
Sure.
So
yeah, and I think for me, when I'm talking about teenaging, it's interesting because so for us, both of our boys have not really showed an interest in dating. I mean, there's been some people that they've kind of liked, but never really like.
Yeah.
But then, like, my other kids, I don't want to call out my kids, but like there has been an interest there, and so like it's just been kind of interesting trying to navigate that coming along, and I think for me, I'm okay with it. You know, I noticed one of the questions that we had kind of come up with beforehand is like, you know, is there anything with our own dating experiences that informs the way that our date informs how we are, you know, feeling about our kids? And I think for me, so I'm taking this back to me. For me, growing up, I almost always had a girlfriend. Like I kind of built my probably self-esteem on that.
Sure.
Right. Like that was just something that I almost always, and gosh, I'm trying to think back when I would have started dating, and oh man, it would have probably been, I don't know, probably actually dating probably freshman year. Yeah. And again, what's that really mean as a freshman? Because I didn't really have anyone that were friends that were older. I mean, I had one friend that was a grade older than me, so he could have driven and he did, but I mean, really, what's that mean?
Right.
When
as far as
right.
Like
and I think that's one of the things. But yeah, for me, I was dating pretty much from then on until I got married, right?
Yeah.
And so there wasn't really much of a time that I wasn't dating somebody, and I know that I had probably based some of my the way I valued myself on that, and so that's not good. And so that's something I looking at when I'm thinking about my kids, some of the things that I want to pass down to them are, you don't need to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend all the time.
Right.
Like it's okay for you to have one, but don't base your value on that. Like there's one reason to date, right? It's not because you just want to have a friend that's a girl or whatever, but there's one reason for that. It's to find out who you want to get married to.
Right.
And your hopes is that this is going to last forever, not just, so even as you're, we both have some mutual friends who dated, I think, when they were in kindergarten, and they ended up marrying.
Right.
But
well,
yes, I'm calling you guys out.
Yeah. But you know who you are.
You know who you are. But for the most part, I mean, you're not going to be marrying the person that you're dating in a freshman year. But you're using that example to find out. I mean, you're using that time to figure out what you do and what you don't like in a spouse, in a mate, in a boyfriend, girlfriend.
That's the intentionality that we need to bring to it. I think it's an okay. It's probably a helpful conversation to have. I know we've had it with Aaron. Like, that's why these decisions matter, because you are actually forming your vision and your purpose for the person that you're going to be with. And and hopefully doing so in a relatively safe and controlled environment. It's not all willy-nilly. I mean, and I would go back, to my own experience. I think I had there was such social pressure, at least within the schools that I was doing, like such social pressure to have the girlfriend, have the quote unquote girlfriend or whatever. And that was in middle school for me on.
Your popular kids have girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever
that means.
Starting. Yeah. And again, what does that mean? Because in junior high, but yeah. So I also want to remind people too, as we continue this conversation, that if you're watching in our live studio audience or online in YouTube, which we also consider our live studio audience too. So there, we would love to hear your thoughts on this. So type them in the chat, because we want you to be a part of this conversation also. So
yeah, that's super helpful.
So type some things in the chat, and because we'd like to hear what your thoughts are.
So there's this perception, and that's, I think, so both you and I would be very, very similar, like always having some sort of significant other situation, and it feeling like everybody was doing, like that was the expectation,
right?
Or frequently everybody's doing it. So here's the thing: as I was doing a little bit of research here, Andy. So back in 10 years ago, Pew Research did this project called Research. Let me see. Sorry, I got a small type. It was the Pew Research Center did a teen relationship survey. So this is back conducted between within September and October of 2014, and then into March of 2015, of over 1,000 kids, ages 13 to 17. The deal is, of that 13 to 17 range, 64% of those kids had no serious, any sort of dating relationship whatsoever. I mean, 64%, still the clear majority.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know this survey is a little bit old, and I will say the survey really its age really shows, because I couldn't find one that was this extensive more recently. That kids were connecting heavily over Facebook back then. And since 2015, I mean, when I was like deep into my Youth Men days, it was very clear that teenagers were like fleeing from Facebook by the
right.
droves, right? Like that's been a demographic that's not been around. But there's this perception and there's this pressure, like, oh, everybody, quote unquote, everybody's doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's helpful to say, yeah, maybe not as many as we think, and those that are, of that 35% that are, really only a relatively small percentage would actually say that those are serious. They would identify those as serious relationships. Yeah. So, so it's kind of like, I think, perception too, because we as parents, I have seen this in certain parenting circles,
mm-hmm.
where it's like, you want your kid to fit in and be cool. And so either overtly or not so overtly, you're encouraging them in this kind of relationship scheme.
Sure.
Right. And maybe we don't need to. That was just kind of one thought that crossed my mind. Like, mm-hmm. For sure, not everyone's doing it. And if you want to be one of those that are not participating in the dating thing, then that's
right.
Then that's great.
Right. And I think I feel like that's what we've kind of said with our kids too. We've kind of said, it's okay. Like, but these are some things, and I made it pretty clear, like, I think I have anyway. So kids, if you're listening, I'm trying to make it clear.
Has Dad made it clear?
That, I'm trying to make it clear that, yes, it's not always healthy to have that relationship, because there is that expectations. And I think, for me, I had that expectation where I was always dating somebody, but I think also not only that, but what we need to think of, okay, so yes, you have this relationship, and not only what happens if it breaks up, but this relationship can also become unhealthy pretty fast.
Yes.
Because you can end up having somebody who you end up spending all your time with, where you're not developing other relationships of the same sex or opposite sex, because you don't want to either offend, or they want to spend the time with you. And so there's this healthy, obviously, Joel, I think we realize this in our married relationships, that it's good to spend time away too, right? I mean, we need to obviously be wooing and dating our spouse, but at the same time, like, you're doing things outside of that. I mean, we're doing this podcast right now. You're spending time away from Jackie. I'm spending time away from Julie, and so there's that healthy relationships that we're cultivating, right? So not just with our spouse.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy for teenagers in particular to slip into that relationship that can become unhealthy because of the fact that you're just going to try to spend all the time with your boyfriend. And that you don't need to and shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. So that sort of bears out like this research that Pew did, this relationship survey. So when asked like what they thought acceptable frequencies of communication, like how frequently these people should be. So it says teen daters usually have similar communication expectations as the significant other. So usually they're pretty well matched. Each individual is pretty well matched on that. So the percentage of teens with relationship experience who expect to hear from their partner. So of the total they surveyed, 11% expect to hear from their partner hourly.
Oh,
so this is like texting. 35% every few hours. And then 38% at least once a day. So the once a day, maybe we wouldn't be like, oh, but, and then that's pretty, and then their partner expects to hear from them. 15% said hourly, 38% said every few hours, 35%, said once a day. So there is a net total of between 85 and 88% roughly, where that's a high degree of communication. And I just wondered if that is sustainable, in and of itself, if that's the expectation. I mean, to your point, it quickly engulfs the young person.
Right. So from our studio audience here on Zoom, most definitely time together is great, but you don't always have the same interest. You don't always have to have together to be together to done everything. That's the one main thing we always dealt with for my youngest and my oldest boys, and now with my eldest. To me, it's not healthy. Some can do it, some can't.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep. And you gotta, depending on the personality of your child, some of them will go all in on that and be totally immersed. Yeah. Others are like, listen, I need my me time, and they'll keep the boundaries more clear one way or the other. So yeah, and that's, I mean, going back to the Pew research that you were just talking about, like that's pretty intense. I don't even most of the time talk to, I would say every couple hours. Sometimes I text Julie during the work day. Yeah, but not always. Like there's some days that it's like maybe a full day. You got a full work day, and
I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't text her at all. Whatever. But I mean, yeah, there's a little bit difference because we're in communication usually in the morning before we get up, and whereas with a teenager, they live in different households. They're not seeing each other right away. But yeah, I don't think that's healthy more than a couple times a day. But texting has become, I mean, even when we were kids, Joel, I mean, I'm going to show my age here, but I didn't have a cell phone until, I don't even know if I had one in high school.
I was a senior in high school when I got mine.
And you're significantly younger than I am. So,
why, thank you.
But I'm going to start walking with a cane soon. But I didn't even have one then, and even then it was you paid by the number you only had certain amount of text. And this is really showing my age. And then you had that T9 texting where you had to like push the letter 3 times to get the alphabet down, and it was a pain to text. So
painful.
I mean, people got good at it, but not me. But yeah, that was one of the things I think that for me that looking at that's not healthy when you're having that much communication. I think with your significant other, especially on a teenage level.
Right. And as we've said, most of it is through the medium of technology, of text, of social media. It's not even necessarily face to face. So it's kind of like,
well, we've all experienced it, right? I mean, you can't really tell tone and inflection through a text message. And so, it's not the same. Text messaging is not the same. I mean, as being face to face, it's not developing the same relationship.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, that's where, yeah.
So here's maybe we get into the part of the conversation, Andy, where we talk about some of the guidelines and rules that we have set up. Because I want to touch on if we have had different approaches. My daughter is only 8 years old, and so we are not having.
You're not having that
to
conversation.
To be clear,
right
we're
now.
not having that conversation yet. So this is more of your area of expertise. But wondering about the guidelines that you guys have set, maybe when and so guidelines, and then touching a little bit on, are the guidelines the same for both our guys and our girls? Do they differ some at all?
Well,
and like, yeah, how you and Julie have navigated that, and then I'll tell you where we're at.
You're not talking anything with Molly, so
no, and not have only two boys at this point.
So I think in our, again, like I kind of had mentioned it, but our two boys weren't super interested until they're showing interest in dating now, but they're not necessarily like they were with Reagan. Reagan has showed more interest in that, and she's a freshman. And so we've kind of taken the lines of like, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
As we talk, like, what does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like, so you have a interest or whatever, like, what does that mean for you now? Because like I was saying earlier, you can't date.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go on quote unquote traditional dates because you can't go anywhere, right? I mean, you could if we would take you, but
so is that a quote unquote guideline or rule for you guys right now? Like you having a close friendship with a person with a guy, you haven't said no to that, but in terms of like the two of you going somewhere,
I don't know that we've necessarily said no, and,
okay.
and I think that it depends. I think you have to respect and go with the other kid's parents too. So this is not just
absolutely.
This is not just a single thing, right? I mean, this isn't just me saying, okay, Reagan, you can date or you can't date. Like,
right.
Like this is obviously the person or people that she's interested in are the same age,
mm-hmm.
and so I have to respect his parents'
right
wishes too.
Right.
And so
you feel like you need to know what those wishes are, probably.
Right. And I do. I mean, we've talked through this and I know that. And so so we're on the same page of, okay, this is what it looks like because he can't, whatever. This is what his parents said. So this is our statement right now.
Yeah.
And so
so you've taken kind of a community-based approach to dating.
I have.
I love it. I think so. We know both of the other families of the ladies that our boys are interested in or in relationships with. We had probably a much more like intentional conversation with Aaron about that, like as he was entering high school, because Aaron was not interested, showed no interest. Yeah, I'll say, or very, very little, very, very little interest through junior high or anything like that. And then getting into high school, it was clear that there was something was going on. Because he didn't want to sit with me at basketball games anymore, and that's how I knew.
Right,
there was someone else. And then with Josiah, Josiah just blazes his own trail in places, and so we just have to make sure we're keeping up with what's going on. They're
sure
a little less likely to be forthcoming about that, right?
Right. So you don't want to,
trying to you're trying to, in all of this, as it is, Andy, and I know you guys have felt this, maintaining open lines of communication, not making them feel like they need to hide anything, right? That these are okay things to talk about. But yeah, we're just always we're just super hesitant of like, okay, when you say you have a girlfriend, what does that actually mean, and
right, how
do you understand all of that and all of that?
So have you talked about that? Like what your expectations are, like what they can, I mean, yeah, I know for us, we've said, okay, we've asked Reagan, what does this mean? Like, what do you call that in junior, or not junior high, but at your age, what do people call what you're doing?
Yeah.
And she said talking.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm trying to understand that as a parent, like, okay, what does that involve?
Yeah.
Like, is that so the same as dating? Like, or is there a difference to that? And what does that mean?
Do you think this is how old we are? Is that the new cultural? Is that the new cultural? I'd be interested. I need to hear it from the young people. Is that the new label? Like, hey, there's talking, and then there's dating. Are these like, because I've heard that, like I've heard that, like, oh, we're just talking.
Right. I think it's a little bit like seeing each other or whatever. Yeah. Like what I think we would have done in junior high, where you're like, I have this warm fuzzy relationship. We're going out,
right?
But we're not really like dating. Like I think it'd be the same as going out, but you're not dating because you're not going on dates.
Yep.
It would be more of
there's something different or special about this relationship. I
see you at school.
Yeah.
And we have this, like, we like each other.
Yes, there's a connection.
I know that I like you, and you know that you like me, and
hopefully maybe you're not liking other people the same way you're liking me. Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's what would be considered talking. I should have got Reagan's definition.
Yeah.
For this show.
We'll follow up on the new relationship definition.
She probably won't tell me.
She's like, I can't give you inside access to the secret world of the terms. Yeah. So yeah, we have taken, I think, we're probably our sort of our expectations were basically we've just said, number one, kind of I don't know, it uncovered some things that were within me that I found uncomfortable, where it's like having, obviously we're having the quote unquote the talk, with Aaron, and then it becomes kind of more like,
but at the same time, does that mean, I mean, you've said that according to research, like getting in a relationship is more likely to lead to sexual activity or whatever. And
right around age 15.
Right. So does that mean that's something that you should be having? I mean, yes, I think you should, as with Josiah, but like, how do you guys treat that? Because I mean, especially if he's dating, that means,
I'll just tell you,
whatever.
I'll tell you what was a huge relief and a huge confirmation for us. And God was very good to us on this. Aaron was able to, and Aaron's significant other, we've met the parents and all of that, know who they are. We were able to have the conversation and definitely able to confirm that both of them have the same expectations and boundaries in their relationship.
Okay.
And that particularly, and I just was very, very proud of both of them, where it was just like, it's like it's a non-starter for them. Like this is what, us being at this age and non-married, these are the boundaries for our relationship. Right. And they're, now you and I both know that those boundaries will be tested as they get older, as they have more freedoms, all of that. But they have at least decided right now that what they want that relationship to look like. Meanwhile, they're inevitably going to be having friends or people around them or that they know about that are not
following the same.
They're not. That are part of the 35% of kids in that age range that enter into those kind of relationships. So I guess that was the conversation where it was like, we just told Aaron, number one, here's what respecting a woman looks like, right? This is how you are to talk to her, how you are to treat her. And hopefully you see me exempling that in our home with how I'm, again, talking to your mother, relating to your mom, how I'm showing that I care for her and respect her and all of that.
That puts you on high alert though, for you making sure, which is great. I mean, that makes you have to reevaluate how you're treating Jackie, right?
Yep.
I mean,
it absolutely does. I was thinking as I was doing the show notes, that definitely, I was just thinking, I'm like, gosh, yeah, that's just reminded me of the importance of it for sure.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. So again, we've always said that this show is not necessarily a Christian show, but the two of us are Christians, and so that's going to come out.
Yep.
And so for me, it was always important that I dated a Christian lady.
Yeah.
Because this is what I said going forward, and when I started dating, that dating was specifically for trying to figure out what I wanted in a spouse, and eventually, and hope, and that would the goal would be for that to lead to marriage, right?
Yes.
And so I always said that I wanted to date someone Christian.
Yeah.
And I think my parents were along those same lines. I don't remember if they ever said, yes, you have to. I mean, whatever. I know I've expressed, at one point, I expressed interest in a person that I didn't think was a Christian. And I don't remember ever getting you shouldn't be dating that person, but it was like, are you sure?
Yeah, there were more questions.
Right. And so, is that something that you have tried to impress on your kids too, as far as like, maybe a rule? Yeah. I mean, I think it kind of maybe depends on the age too, especially if they're younger.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that conversation needs to happen. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, in terms of boundaries and in terms of broadly speaking, Christian theology forms the basis of how we view relationships. Outside of that, if you're dating a person, this is true for older adults, teenagers, whatever. If you are dating a person that does not understand relationships to be a reflection of God revealing himself to us, and does not understand like physical intimacy as a gift given within a covenantal context, like if there's just a completely different understanding of that, then you're going to be at odds with that person. And that person, I'm not trying to demonize anybody, but that person is going to lead you and guide you in different directions.
It's always easier to, I mean, yeah. And I don't know why you would, I mean, I get that some people are like, well, I'm going to convert them. I'm going to lead them to Christ, which that's a great goal. Lead them to Christ before you date them.
I don't know if I've ever seen it happen. I'll be honest with you.
Right. And I think more often than not, what I've heard of is that non-Christian person ends up leading them away from the faith.
Right.
And so, so that's something we've said, I mean, we've talked about with our kids. Because it's such an important thing.
Yeah. I mean, again, that relationship with God is the thing that is first and foremost to us. It's why, it's the thing that's structuring all of our should be just, guiding all of our decision making. And so, that is, it's definitely, important. I have noticed that both of our boys, one thing I will say is that when they have shown an interest in a girl, they are able to tell us what church that girl goes to almost immediately. I don't know if that's the thing so I don't know if it's like, and hopefully, I mean, I think it was like, those things have just come up in their conversations very quickly.
Great. That's awesome.
Which I think is awesome, right? If those are one of the first things, like, hey, I want to tell you about my faith community or what's important to me. Mm-hmm. Like if that's early on in the conversation, I think that's probably a pretty good sign. Mm-hmm. But if I would definitely be of concern, and it's so funny because I was at church today, Pastor Gene was talking, just asked the question about, are you pursuing a relationship and like you're 10 dates in and that hasn't come up once? He goes, hey, that's, he's like red flag. And it's like, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think, the faith component is obviously very, 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 very essential to say, I think I would, and our two boys know that our expectation would be, yes, that they're not that they're not dating or involved with an unbelieving person. Not that is a safeguard. Obviously, that's not a foolproof safeguard against other problems.
Right.
But you are training yourself, to your exact point, as you've been saying, you are training yourself for what healthy and proper relationships look like for the future.
Right. And if that's it, and again, if the goal is to lead to marriage,
yeah,
because you never know, like there's a lot of people who date in high school and end up marrying their high school sweetheart, and it works great. Or their kindergarten sweetheart, and it works great.
Or their kindergarten sweetheart. Yeah.
But,
I mean, I mean, Jackie and I started dating. I was a sophomore in high school, and so that does, right. That happens. Gosh, Jackie and I'll have to tell you for the show, Jackie had this really, I don't know, profound moment the other day. I think it ties in a little bit here, where she's just like, when you and I were like first together and we're having, it's just all that, like that fun, all that fun that we were having when we were young, and hadn't have a lot of other concerns. She's like, did you once ever think of the future where we're carting kids to soccer practice and it's like, right. You have no idea what your future looks like in that relationship, but the fact that Jackie and I built our relationship on some central important things enables us to be okay with the fact that our relationship now looks like,
right. And you have to, I mean, your relationship is going to change. And those who don't realize that, I mean, other people end up divorced where they're like, you're not the same person I married. Well, no, I hope not. Like, I hope that you're not the same person I married, but dating looks different when you're 45 and whatever. But so we've talked a lot about, or a little bit about, what concerns us about teen dating. We've talked about, the averages of kids that start dating end up becoming sexually active before they should be, and a lot of other issues that could come up as far as like possessiveness and other stuff like that. Yep. So what, if any, positives? Like, are there positives? About teenage dating, and if so, let's chat about it.
I think the positives for me are that it can be a laboratory for learning about healthy relationships and how you respect people, how you care for them, and how you have, if the relationship needs to change or needs to end, how you have hard conversations well.
So right, so yes, that's a good.
That can be. I mean, that's going to be hard. There's going to be heartbreak. There's going to be. I can think of a few relationships that I had in high school that came to an end that I like, even now as an adult, quite honestly, if I'm honest, I still have some regrets about like how that happened. Right. Cause there was hurt there, right. And I think it's like, my dumb teenage brain didn't,
well, and I think too, it's good. Yes. There's going to be some grieving. Yeah. It's a loss. It's a loss. And so there will be grieving out of that.
But that can be that can be a positive side of that.
But I think that as being able to do that when you're around your parents who can take you in and hopefully sit with you.
Yes.
And talk and help you through it. Yep. Maybe help you eat a gallon of ice cream. I don't know. Whatever that looks like.
Whatever you need.
But if you can do that when you're around your parents, that's going to help you in the future when you're, let's say, not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. I've had lots of breakups. Like I said earlier, I was dating constantly. And so there was a lot of times that I was broken up with. Yep. And for me to be able to learn what that looked like during high school, when my parents were there, helped me when they weren't there later on, like when I had moved out already.
Right. Yeah. I don't want my kids having to navigate all of those things without trusted older adults near them. And this is why I get, there are parents that have decided, and I can respect this, though I have major hesitations to it. They're not allowing their kids to be in any sort of romantic relationship all the way through high school. Like until you're 18, absolutely forbidden. I've been in youth work long enough, Andy, and this is one thing I can say from my experience. It's that those kids that when they fail in relationships, they fail big and they fail in really, really hard ways, really, really detrimental ways, because they didn't have this safer relational laboratory to work those things out.
Yeah.
They went off to college or they went off into their career. They moved away from home. They got connected with XYZ person. It was all fireworks and butterflies
until the bucket of water got dumped on the fireworks.
Exactly. And then just was a smoldering hot mess. And we wouldn't wish that for our kids either. There is, I think, our parental insecurities come into play here. Absolutely come into play. Are you able to take on the slight risk of having your child in some sort of relationship now, and having the trust and the rapport with them and the love with them that you can walk through it together? Because I think that is important and necessary. I want them making safe failures, more safe failures now than really destructive ones later on when they don't have us around.
Right. And I think and hopefully we can, like you said earlier, we can use this time as husband and wife to demonstrate to our children what a healthy relationship looks like. And that sometimes means arguments. And I mean, obviously I don't have good days every day.
No.
Right? Like I'm a happy-go-lucky person, but there's a lot of times that I'm not.
Yep.
And so
yeah,
it helps to be able to demonstrate that in a relationship now, and then have them have that practice, right? I mean,
yes.
like yeah, they're going to learn. My kids, even if they don't date now, are going to see that and know what that looks like. But for them to be able to practice that now, I think it's worth its money.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And the other thing I would say, in all of this, in these relationships, and we haven't, and this is, I guess, more immediately the focus for Andy, and it's a focus for all of us in terms of whether we're talking with our boys or our girls, but the statistics are pretty alarming in terms of like with teen violence, dating violence, for instance, that there's a decent amount of violence perpetrated within teen relationships following breakups or during the relationship that leads to a breakup. This, again, Pew Research came out with a study that came out that 35% of kids never talk about it. They never report it to anybody.
That's wow.
Right. Pretty alarming. And that in their relationships, about that same percentage of girls have to remove or block someone on social media because of flirting or unwanted advances that they experience within that dating relationship.
Well, and it's amazing to, like, just even thinking of the difference dating now between dating when we were in high school, right? It looks 100% different.
Yeah.
We had AOL Instant Messenger, right? But that's about it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know that I had that during high school, but now, like, social media is so present. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But
so again, I think just to double down on the fact of why we need relationships with our kids in this process is that relationships can go bad, and there is a very real possibility that harm can come to our kids. Which, by the way, that possibility, harm to our kids, is a constant reality, no matter what. And we want to make sure our kids are safe. Protecting them from that by just saying, no, you're not being in any relationship whatsoever, is not the answer. It's us being involved and proactive is the key. Because I'm going to make sure that I'm going to do my best to make sure they're not with people that would perpetrate that on them.
Yeah.
And also, but it's a conversation with my boys, who I'm like, and not in a million years would I think that they would ever bring harm to a girl, and they're like, that's not. But I don't just assume that. I say, like, if the relationship goes bad or the breakup happens, here's what respecting that person looks like, even in the midst of that. So again, all the more reason to have connection with our kids. Because these relational realities are a thing. And now with social media and the ability for a person to retaliate against someone if a relationship ends in really, really unhealthy sort of ways is also greater.
Yeah.
So these are the dynamics of teen dating now. These are things that we as parents, I mean, it feels like a lot, guys. I know parents.
This is a heavy episode.
Yeah,
it
feels like there can be a lot at risk. But here's what I would encourage you with, and Andy and I have both experienced this. if you love your kids well and you're involved in their life, and if you are borderline annoying in the amount of questions that you ask them and following up, and that's everything from how was your day today, just beginning the practice of them knowing that you're always going to be interested in their relationships. The other day, I think Josiah's like, why do you, what was it? We asked, because we're asking we asked for the names of his, like, he's like, yeah, some of my friends from football. And we're like, well, what are their names or whatever? He's like, why do you always want to know everybody's name?
Because I do.
Because that is a way of us connecting and me showing you and understanding that, like, I care who the people who you're around, and I care the people that are investing in you. So, friends, it's worth the effort. There's so much good to be had. I love it. I've gotten to officiate a lot of weddings over my time. The best ones are weddings where mom and dad have clearly just been a relational example and have been a support to their kids, and where they've on top of that, they've been praying for their kids in this area of life. They've been demonstrating healthy relationships to their children, and then their kids felt like mom and dad's blessing in their relationship was a really important, really important thing to them. Those are the best weddings to be at. I've had a few on the other side where it's like, this kid is off the rails and they're making this decision, and it's like, well, yeah, but where were you? Where were you? Well, and part of it is like, well, you were absent in this area of their life, right? So let's just do the hard work. Let's have the loving, sometimes awkward, hard conversations. It's not a one size fits all for everybody. We're parenting all these different kids that are not a single one of them's like another, and I guess that's great, but sometimes I wish it was a little more predictable. But we believe in you guys. We know you can do it. We're on this journey too. Obviously, we'd love to hear any feedback you guys have on this.
So you can go to call our voicemail, 574-213-8702, 574-213-8702, just a voicemail. But you can also call our feedback line, email our feedback line at feedback@dudesanddads.com. And we would love to hear from you about this subject. Joel, any final closing thoughts?
Hey, Andy, as always, I love talking about life and our family with you. So thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's been good. Guys, again, if you want to help out with our goal of getting a new production Mac, just go over to dudesanddads.com/help. We would appreciate that.
Head over to dudesanddads.com for all previous shows, all the goodies we got over there. Merchandise as well.
Yeah, yes.
Christmas is coming.
Yes, the hats. I love the hat, man. I have a hat. I don't have it on tonight.
I gotta get a hat. So anyway, thanks for joining us. And as always, we wish you grace
and peace.